President Obama surprised a lot of Ugandan pro-democrats when he made a statement about the anti-gay law in Uganda, saying that that will change the relationship between Uganda and the United States. And then 2 weeks after that, he sent military support to Uganda. Isn't that a contradiction?
I think the way we see the relationship with Uganda is it's really a multifaceted relationship. And frankly, when it comes to our engagement with the military on the one hand, and certainly the human rights agenda on the other hand, the human rights agenda, which I am responsible for discussing and thinking about back in Washington, I actually see those two issues being mutually reinforceable in the sense that, as we have issues that we need to talk about on the human rights side with the security forces, that reinforces the human rights agenda as well. I think it's not something where you either do one or the other. I would actually say both of those go into having a strong relationship that's premised on important democratic and human rights principles. And so, for me, it's important that we interact with all aspects of the government, and that, to have a strong, multifaceted relationship is something that we can do with an important partner like Uganda.
So my question is, why being had in Museveni in Mogadishu and not had in Museveni in Uganda?
Well, one tool that we use and that my bureau is responsible for is every year we have a human rights report. We have one for 2013. It's public, it's accessible. We have a very big launch, and we're in the midst of preparing the 2014 Human Rights Report. Within that is for us an important tool to discuss those issues internally on the human rights front that we find troubling, that we find warrants greater discussion, and it's a way to hold to account some of those issues. So as we prepare and as we eventually launch the 2014 Human Rights Report, that will be, as in years past, a vehicle and a way to really have serious and open discussions with the Ugandan government about issues that are relayed in that report, among other ways.
Well, now, could you describe the relationship that the U.S. has with the human rights community, a sacred one from the one they have with the government?
I think we have strong partnerships with both. I can tell you, even in my visit here, I met with a number of different civil society human rights actors, as well as with government counterparts. Again, I think for us, the important thing with the relationship is that it is a comprehensive, is a multifaceted, and a rich relationship, and that there is room within the relationship to talk about a host of issues. Whether it's talking about the economic side of things, whether it's talking about the issue of democracy, the issue of civil society space, whether it's talking about fundamental issues with regard to human rights, it is important that we are able to engage in conversations across the spectrum.
When you look at the relationship between the government and civil society organizations, they look like two warring factions. How do you balance that?
I really think it depends on the issue, and it depends kind of what you're talking about. I think, by nature, there is a part of civil society that does need to take, somewhat of a more accountable line when it comes to various issues. It's the role that civil society plays. Civil society is a watchdog oftentimes. It plays a role in terms of an oversight function. It plays a role as an accountability function, but it also plays a role as a partner and an enabler of certain important policies as well.
Would you work with a country that has a questionable human rights reputation, but rather indispensable in fighting terrorism?
What I would say is this: there is always room in the relationship to work on issues of concern, to have discussions. That's what we're here for. Certainly, I would say that the terrorism issue is one that is of crucial importance to all of us. But I don't think you can decouple that from human rights issues as well. In fact, I would say those are linked. As we engage and try to deal with terrorist threats, there is a huge amount of room to incorporate human rights principles into that. In fact, I think that's a bedrock of how we ought to approach that issue, and that is really, I think, one of the core principles we come into when having these discussions. These are not separate discussions. The two go hand in hand and are mutually reinforcing.